Tips for winning your NCAA tournament bracket, and Michigan wins the Big Ten basketball championship. Next on this week's jam-packed episode of Michigan Podcast.
But there's going to be one team that's going to play solely as a team. No man is more important than the team. No coach is more important than the team. The team, the team, the team.
Looks deep for Anthony Clark. Waits for it, tip, caught!
Hey, they said you can't beat Ohio State. Now what?
Brady gets to Ruffing. Throws it, and a touchdown, Knight again. Schultz just before Brazil got him, and a leaping interception by Woodson.
Harbaugh back to throw over the middle, caught by Collier at the 5 on his feet, touchdown Michigan. On its way. It's good.
He's 5'7", 179 pounds, a junior at Michigan. But Jamie Morris packs a wallop, and he delivers for Bo Schembechler.
And here's your first play. Pressure coming. Sack. It is Glenn Steele, number 81, who fought his way through the traffic.
Option. And Robinson calls his own number, and he's going to score. Oh, an easy touchdown for Robinson and Michigan.
We're going to win it. We're going to win the championship again because we're going to play as a team. And when we play as a team and the old season is over, you and I know it's going to be Michigan again. Michigan.
Go Blue, I'm Steve Deace. We will be joined later by my co-host, never partner, over on Bigger Ten, Aaron McIntyre, as he and I are going to break down one another's bracket projections for the NCAA Tournament 2025. But first, let's lead off here on Michigan Podcast talking about the team that matters most here. The beloved Michigan Wolverines winning their fourth Big Ten Tournament championship. And this one may be the most improbable yet, even more so than that 2017 team that remains the lowest seeded team to ever win the Big Ten tournament. They came in as an 8 seed, ended up winning it all. But that team, had kind of, an improbable run with the near tragedy there, with the plane mishap on the ice as it was taking off. This team this year lost 3 straight and frankly wasn't competitive for long stretches of those 3 games, was on the cusp of winning a Big Ten championship in the regular season just a few weeks ago, had a very difficult draw. I would argue this Big Ten tougher than the one the 2017 team had. There was just, and you have a first-year coach. No first-year coach had ever won the Big Ten tournament before, and Michigan's point guard was struggling. In 2017, Derek Walton was playing very well down the stretch and had played Michigan into contention for an NCAA tournament berth by that period of time. I mean, Trey Donaldson was playing himself out of the lineup. He was sitting and being benched for long stretches, just got flat out punked at Breslin in the final game of the regular season. So this is Michigan's 4th Big Ten tournament title, but I would argue what we saw was its most improbable, even though the 3 wins pretty much encompassed what we saw. The first game against Purdue was the Michigan team that we saw for the first 3 months of the season that came out of January as the betting favorite to win the Big Ten. The team we saw against Maryland is the team we saw much of the second half of the Big Ten season. Brilliant for stretches, and then other stretches, you're just, what was that? And then finding a way to pull it out with a close win at the end, that incredible drive by Trey Donaldson there against the Maryland Terrapins. And then the third game was the kind of game we've seen Michigan lose here down the stretch, where it was very clear the juice wasn't there, the energy wasn't there, the shooting clearly wasn't there. But this time the defense was. And this time, the shooting wasn't there for the opponent either, and Michigan got it done against Wisconsin. 3 wins, all against top 20 teams overall, according to Ken Palm. 3 quad 1 wins in about 48 hours. Michigan enters the NCAA tournament now with more quad one wins than all but 3 teams in America have. And for that, was rewarded a 5th seed in their region. Kind of weird. Nevertheless, we're not going to lick the gift horse in the mouth here. The Wolverines were an 8-win team a year ago. This was not a program that Dusty May inherited. It was a crater. This is an entirely new roster, with the exception of Will Shetter and Namari Burnett. Nobody else that returned on this roster from a year ago played really meaningful minutes, or at least you don't want them to. This is a roster that had to be completely reconstructed on the fly in late March, in about 2 to 4 weeks, by Dusty May, and what was still an uncertain NIL economy for Michigan. They were still getting their bearings there now. They're fully ensconced in that space now, but they were not a year ago. Dusty May, an unproven coach, a coaching staff still not put together that's going to be formed from contacts around the country. So to put that all together and then to go in and win the Big Ten tournament the way that they did, especially the way they came into that event, I think of the 4 Michigan has won in school history so far, this one is the most improbable. And what an incredible season it has already been for Michigan. Yes, this has been at times, and I have not been shy about sharing this on X, this at times has been one of the least enjoyable Michigan basketball teams I can ever remember, despite the surprising success, because you don't usually enjoy anything more than surprising success. You don't feel expectations. It's the expectations that go with the success that's expected. That's stressful, and that's where you start feeling like you're more relieved you didn't lose than excited that you actually won. No, it's the surprising success that you didn't see coming. That's often the most enjoyable kind of season, but not the way this team played at times. I had to turn it off for long stretches. I mean, I've never seen a team win 25 games in college basketball, committing as many dumbass turnovers with as many moronic, mind-numbed passes ever. Just never seen anything like it. And yet, they still found a way to win a lot of games. They've still got 2 outstanding 7-footers in the post. They found a way to get them to play together and work together when most college basketball teams prefer to go 5 out rather than 2 down. I mean, this was just an incredible first year for Dusty May, and it sets the tone for what's coming forward. I mean, listen, every October, about 360 teams in Division I start college basketball practice, and those 360 some odd teams only have 4 ways they can win a banner. You win your league in the regular season, you win your conference tournament, you get to the Final Four, you win the national championship. So you start already with single-digit odds that you're going to have a banner season. For Michigan to have a banner season in Dusty May's first season with a vagabond roster that had to be put together like this one on the fly is just a truly remarkable achievement. The micro frustrations and the many times this year I had to turn the team off for long stretches because it was so frustrating to watch the lack of boxing out and turnovers notwithstanding, I think this team will be remembered in future years very fondly because of the banner. You won't remember the struggles, the frustrations, the rake steps to get to this point. You're going to remember just the final destination, winning that Big Ten tournament there in Indianapolis, and the statement that made about the future of this program and the future of Michigan basketball under Dusty May. And it's very obvious that the future is very bright. But how long will that future last now that March Madness is here? Michigan was given a very difficult draw. We'll talk about that with our ballot projections later. But when we come back, it's time to give you your annual look at the tips you need to win your pool, your bracket contest. Stay tuned. Folks, March Madness is here, and this is the perfect time to support us on our Patreon page. I've got my March Madness picks that are already up for the first 4 for the first couple of rounds of the NCAA tournament. Per tradition, I'll pick every single game, all 67 games of the NCAA tournament. I will pick them again against the spread. All of that there are baseball picks. Last year, our baseball picks were phenomenal. We had our strongest season ever in Major League Baseball a year ago. That starts up here at the end of March as well. NFL draft props and more. We get asked all the time, how can we support you here at Michigan Podcast? So many of you are doing this already. Keep it going. Support us. Patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. $10 a month. You get all kinds of exclusive content. including opportunities, particularly of futures bets and more, to more than get your money back in winnings. Patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. Patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. And thanks to all of you that are already supporting us over at Patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. Now is the time on Sprockets when we dance. This is always one of our most anticipated conversations every single year. I got to tell you, the 2 COVID years had me doubting these trends, right? With so many roster outliers out there, the introduction of NIL, extended eligibility. But last year, the NCAA tournament trends came roaring back as we progressed to the mean. You don't always regress to the mean. Sometimes you progress to the mean, and we did that a year ago. So back by popular demand, my perennial tips and tricks of how to win your NCAA tournament contest and pool. Let's begin with number 1. The team in the field ranked highest in KenPom's, quote, luck factor. Yes, there is such a metric at KenPom, meaning the amount of wins you actually have over the top of your analytics. The team in the field ranked highest in KenPom's luck factor has lost its first game in the NCAA tournament 18 of the last 21 years. This year, that team is Montana. They take on Wisconsin in their first game. Number 2. No team that lost its first game in its conference tournament has ever gone on to win the NCAA tournament. So this year, eliminate these 7 teams from championship consideration. Baylor, these are always, by the way, going to be in alphabetical order. All right, Baylor, Georgia, San Diego State, Texas A&M, UCLA, Vanderbilt, and Xavier. Those 7 teams, based on this trend that goes all the way back to when seeding began in 1979, this trend has been a metaphysical certitude. So those 7 teams are not one of the teams that will be making the 6-game magical run to win it all. Number 3, all but one national champion since 2002 when KenPom debuted, finished ranked in the top 25 of both of KenPom's offensive and defensive efficiency ratings. This year, that is these 7 teams heading into the tournament: Auburn, Clemson, Duke, Houston, Iowa State, but they have a key injury there, Florida, and Tennessee. However, this year there are more teams than ever before, a whopping 11. There are 11 teams with an analytical striking distance of fulfilling this metric with strong tournament runs, meaning what they would have to do to get far into the tournament would improve their metrics and put them in this threshold. Those 11 teams are Alabama, Arizona, Gonzaga, Louisville, Marquette, Maryland, Michigan State, Mississippi, Texas Tech, UCLA, and Wisconsin. It's almost, speaking of the term metaphysical certitude, it's almost another one of those that your national champion is one of the teams in this paragraph right here. Number 4. In the last 33 years, only 7 coaches have won it all in their first trip to the Final Four, although 3 of them have been the last 5 national champions, so keep that in mind. But of the 7 coaches whose teams already meet the aforementioned KenPom threshold, 4 of them have never been to the Final Four before. Brad Brownell at Clemson, TJ Otzelberger at Iowa State, John Shire at Duke, and Mike White at Florida. Of the 11 teams which could meet the KenPom threshold with strong tournament runs, 5 have been to a Final Four before. Chris Beard at Ole Miss, Mick Cronin at UCLA, Mark Few at Gonzaga, Tom Izzo at Michigan State, and Shaka Smart at Marquette. 5. 27 of the last 36 teams, that's 75%, to make the Final Four were in the top 25 of KenPom's defensive efficiency ratings at the start of the tournament. This year, that is these 21 teams: Arkansas, Auburn, Clemson, Duke, Florida, Houston, Iowa State, Kansas, Louisville, Maryland, Michigan, Michigan State, Mississippi, New Mexico, San Diego State, St. John, St. Mary's, Texas A&M, Tennessee, UCLA, and VCU. If this trend holds, 3 of your Final Four teams are on that list among those 21 teams right there. 6. In the last 9 years, 15 of the 18 teams, that's 83%, to make it to the national championship game ranked in the top 6 of the offensive efficiency rate metrics at Bart Torvik's analytics site from February 1st through the end of the conference tournaments. And in fact, this trend was money until the 2 COVID years. It kind of fell apart during the 2 COVID years, but it came back again last year. Connecticut and Purdue were both in this category a year ago. That was your national championship game. This year, that's these 6 teams. These are the 6 teams that have been in the top 6 of Bart Torvik's offensive efficiency ratings from February 1st to the end of the conference tournaments: Alabama, Auburn, Duke, Florida, Houston, and Texas Tech. Chances are at least one of the teams that will play for the national championship on the first Monday in April are in this paragraph right here. Number 7, since 2002, only 3% of the teams to make the Final Four ranked in the top 10 of either Ken Palm's offensive and defensive efficiency. I'm having a hard time saying that today. But then outside the top 50 in the other heading into the tournament, although 3 teams, San Diego State, Miami, and Alabama, accomplished this the last 2 years. Now, of course, San Diego State and Miami did it, again, during those 2 COVID outlier years. So this year, fade these 5 teams from getting as far as the Final Four: Kentucky, Missouri, Purdue, St. John's, and St. Mary's. They are teams in the top 10 of one category, but outside the top 50 of the other. 8, no team west of the Central Time Zone has won the NCAA tournament since Arizona did it in 1997. So it's been a minute. Number 9, in the round of 64, what we used to call the first round, here are some trends. 16 seeds are all-time just 2 and 154. 15 seeds all-time are just 11 and 145. Pick at least one 13 or 14 seed to win, because at least one of them does a little more than 20% of the time, or once a year. 12 seeds have won at least one game 30 of the last 35 years. 9 seeds are almost exactly 500 against 8 seeds. 10, in the round of 32, what we used to call the second round, pick all the number 1 seeds to advance to the Sweet 16, which they do over 90% of the time historically. Pick at least one double-digit seed to make it to the Sweet 16, which has happened 37 of the last 39 years. 11, Sweet 16 trends: advance exactly 3 number 1 seeds to the Elite 8, because all-time number 1 seeds make it that far about 70% of the time. Advance no team seeded lower than 11th, because all-time only 3 of the 320 teams ever to make it to the Elite 8 were seeded that low. That's 0.9%. That's 0.9%. 12, in the Elite 8, advance either 1 or 2 number 1 seeds, because 31 of the last 39 Final Fours, that's 79%, had exactly that many number 1 seeds advance that far. Also, advance no double-digit seeds to the Final Four, because all time since seeding began, only 7 of the 180 Final Four teams, that's 3.8%, were seeded lower than 9th, although one of them was NC State last year. 13, here are some trends for the Final Four. Advance no team seeded lower than 6, because only 3 teams in the last 38 years, or 7.8% of the time, has there been a national championship game with a team seeded lower than that. 1 seeds have squared off for the national championship only 10 times ever, but keep this in mind: 7 of those meetings have occurred in just the last 19 years. 35 of the last 36 national champions were seeded 4 or higher. The only exception, Villanova 85, was an 8th seed. 7 of the last 10 national champions were at-large teams, although Connecticut last year was not one of them. So keep this in mind, though, with all of these trends. No one trend should be singled out except maybe the second one, I should say. That's the conference tournament one. That's the one because that's stood the test. That's undefeated since 79. So maybe that's the one that should stand out. But the rest of them, it means what you're looking for are teams that check multiple boxes to either fade or follow. All right. So those are your annual tips to winning your NCAA tournament bracket. When we return, we'll be joined by my co-host at Bigger 10, Aaron McIntyre. He and I are going to share our brackets with you. Who do we pick to get to the 2025 Final Four? Find out next. And now we welcome in my co-host, never partner, from Bigger 10 right here on the channel, Aaron McIntyre. Good to see you, brother. Happy March Madness to you and all who celebrate. All right, so we are now going to do a little impromptu Bigger Ten here in the Middle of Michigan podcast. You and I each are going to unveil the brackets we have that we believe are going to unfold over the next 3 glorious weeks. Aaron, you can go ahead and lead us off.
All right, in the South region, I have Auburn, Michigan State, really a lot of chalk here up until the 9 seed, right? That's all that I have here. The 9 seed Creighton over Louisville in the round of 64. So that's really the only mild upset I've got. In the round of 32, I've got Auburn over Creighton, Michigan going to the Sweet 16 to face Auburn over Texas A&M. I've got Iowa State over Ole Miss to go to the Sweet 16, and Michigan State will face Iowa State in the Sweet 16 as well. In Sweet 16, I've got Auburn and Iowa State moving on, facing off in the Elite 8. I'll let you know who I have advancing out of the Elite 8 into the Final Four when we get to the end of this. Florida, St. John's, Texas Tech, Maryland. I have all of them moving on. Shock there, but I do have upsets. Colorado State, the 12 seed over the 5 seed Memphis, and I've got Drake over Missouri, the 11 seed, moving on. And then another mild upset. This region I had filled. This is my chaos region. Arkansas over Kansas. In the round of 32, Florida over UConn to move on to the Sweet 16. Maryland over Colorado State to move on as well. Texas Tech over Drake, and St. John's over Arkansas. In the Sweet 16, I've got Florida over Maryland to go to the Elite 8, Texas Tech over St. John's to go to the Elite 8. Moving on to the East region, Duke, Alabama, Wisconsin. I've got Akron pulling the 13-4 upset, probably the least likely upset. Akron over Arizona is that upset there. And then Oregon, I've got moving on over Liberty, and then Baylor, a mild upset, just the 9-8 game. Over Mississippi State. Baylor over Mississippi State. In the round of 32 in the East region, Duke, Oregon over Akron, Wisconsin over BYU, Alabama over St. Mary's. Sweet 16, Duke versus Oregon. I've got Duke moving on to the Elite 8, and Alabama over Wisconsin to the Elite 8 as well. One more region here in the Midwest. I've got Houston moving on, Tennessee moving on, Kentucky moving on. I've got the winner of Texas and Xavier over Illinois, whoever ends up winning that game. We've got Purdue moving on and Clemson moving on. In the round of 32 in the Midwest, I've got Houston over Gonzaga, Purdue over Clemson. The winner of Texas and Xavier, again, going on a pretty interesting run there. 3 games in 1 week. Texas, Xavier over Kentucky, and then I've got Tennessee over UCLA. In the Sweet 16, Houston over Purdue, and Tennessee over the winner of Texas and Xavier. And then in the Elite 8, I've got Houston over Tennessee. So the Final Four, my Final Four looks like this. Iowa State and Florida versus Duke and Houston. I've got Florida beating Iowa State in the Final Four and Houston beating Duke. I have Florida winning the championship game over Houston.
All right, Florida's a very popular pick.
It
Every
is.
single personality on ESPN's bracketology show picked Florida to win it all.
I didn't even know that until you said so after I'd already filled out my bracket, and now I feel very dumb.
Well, listen, you're in great company. Those guys are really smart, and Florida has been incredible. They didn't win the SEC, but they won at Auburn. They won at Alabama.
Yeah.
Okay, and they just beat Tennessee in Nashville. Okay, so they've been insanely good. So it's not that you pick them. The problem is if everyone agrees, it's just never going to happen. That's just like sports karma. So it's not a stupid pick. You're stepping in front of fate.
Had I known that, see, it's stupid to step in front of fate, but I did not know what fate was. So is it really fate if I didn't know what it was?
That's a good point. That is a very good point. There you go. I like the reverse mojo there. All right, going to go through my bracket now. I'll start in the South as well. I like Auburn and Creighton in the first 2-round game. That 8-9 game, though, with Louisville and Creighton is going to be a battle. I mean, that's not even your average 8-9 game. Those two teams have been ranked most of the season. I think Louisville's in the top 10 of the Final AP poll, by the way. So here's the thing. I'm going to take on our Patreon page when you get there, if you're a supporter, you're going to see I'm going to take Michigan minus the 2.5 as a game play because I just think warning Michigan, everyone's picking against them now. It's not much of a trap. However, based on my own trends, Aaron, I have to come up with a double-digit seed I think can get to the second weekend. I really don't like the matchups that much of any of the double-digit seeds that would typically get there that could win 2 games. All right. So analytically, I think there are the two best double-digit seeds by far analytically are UC San Diego and UC San Diego and McNeese State. So I kind of narrative crafted a way that they could get there to keep the trend going. And then I'm going to hedge my own trend by picking Michigan in the game picks, if that makes sense. So I've got UC San Diego there in the upset, like everyone else does. A lot of people like Yale too. Yale did this last year. They won't sneak up on Texas A&M. And A&M doesn't do much, but they got a bunch of guys that are way bigger and stronger than anything Yale is saying. Oh, by the way, the player that beat Auburn for Yale last year, he's in the Michigan uniform now, Danny Wolf. They don't have anything close to him on this Yale team. All right. And then I've got Ole Miss going up against North Carolina and beating them in the first round. I think Iowa State beats Lipscomb and then it's done. I think the Keyshawn Gilbert injury is just, I think that's a season ender for them. I like Marquette to escape New Mexico. I almost went with the upset there. And then I've got Michigan State over Bryant. I've got Michigan State then going against Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss knocks out Iowa State, coached by Chris Beard, who, of course, has had some NCAA tournament success before with Texas Tech, getting all the way to the championship Monday night game. I've got UC San Diego then turning around and beating Texas A&M. Again, I'm probably going to hedge in my game picks and not go with this, but I struggled to come up with double-digit seeds that I thought could win multiple games. And then Auburn, I've got over Creighton. I have Auburn over UC San Diego to end the Cinderella run. That'll capture the hearts of America for much of the month of March. And then Bruce Pearl going up against Tom Izzo in a alpha male coaching Titanic clash. But I like the team that comes in the year after they were disappointed. I did this last year with Purdue. I had Purdue beating UConn for the national championship. That was the championship game. I had the wrong result. And then I had Virginia the year after. They had the first ever 1 seed to lose to a 16. Auburn was the hot team a year ago, won the SEC tournament, lost to Yale. Everybody's down on them after the way they finished the year. Yeah, they lost 3 or 4, but it was after they went 17-1 and clinched the SEC, a league that had 14 teams make the tournament. They went 17-1 in that freaking league. All right, so I think now is the time to get the buy sign on Auburn, as a matter of fact. So I'm going to have Auburn against Michigan State in the Elite Eight, with Auburn advancing to the Final Four. In the next region, we will go through the West. I've got Florida over Norfolk State, UConn besting Oklahoma. I have Colorado State, which is favored, by the way, over Memphis. That's rarely happened, a 12 favorite over a 5. But I've got the Rams, who, by the way, in the month of March, games played in the month of March, they're like a top 12 team analytically. They have played very good basketball. I've got Maryland over Grand Canyon, who were kind of a darling in last year's tournament. Drake upsetting perennial NCAA tournament choke artist Missouri going back decades. Missouri is known for NCAA tournament chokes since before, Aaron, you were born. They've been doing it. Texas Tech over UNC Wilmington. I think they get a couple of their key players back here that set out the Big 12 tournament to get ready for the big one. I have Kansas over Arkansas and another Titanic coaching clash there, Calipari and Bill Self. So you have national championship coaches there. And then I have St. John's over Omaha. I think Kansas, the preseason number 1 team, has one shining moment in this tournament and upset St. John's. Remember, they're in my trend where they're in the top 10 of one metric and outside the top 50 in another one. And I think Hunter Dickinson and Bill Self get it done against St. John's and advance to the Sweet 16. Texas Tech dispatches Drake. I think Maryland gives a reality check to Colorado State. And then Florida does the same to 2-time defending champion UConn. Now, here's the thing. Maryland actually matches up very well with Florida. Here's the problem. And, you know, we had this on our day show, and Jake Crane over at Daily Wire's sports show mentioned this, that Florida is the Noah's Ark team. They got 2 of everything, right? Okay. Florida and Maryland's starting 5s are pretty similar. They're pretty evenly matched. Here's the problem. Florida has another starting 5 just like that. Okay. So if you're Maryland, 40 minutes of hell, okay? So I think Florida gets past. They're just a deeper version of what Maryland is. And I think Texas Tech beats Kansas. And then I think Texas Tech, the guts, the grit, the way they play defense, this is the best offensive team they have ever had. And I think they beat the team that everybody is on, everybody that's smart is on, because they've been great. But I'm going to have Texas Tech upsetting Florida in the Elite Eight to get to the Final Four. In my next region, over in the East, I think Duke makes quick work of whoever comes out of that play-in game. I think Baylor edges Mississippi State. I think Oregon gets by Liberty. I think this is another 12-5. I think Liberty's been good in the past, but as a guy who has played Liberty a lot on our Patreon page, and they have failed to cover most nights, I just think they're outclassed here by Dana Altman's crew. I'm going to have Arizona surviving Akron in what I think will be an up and down, high scoring game between two teams that like to play a lot of possessions. I think VCU gives BYU a defensive look it's not accustomed to and gets a mild upset there. Wisconsin over Montana. I think St. Mary's outlast Vanderbilt in a game I think will go down to the final possession. And I think Alabama over Robert Morris, where they'll probably continue to rest a couple of guys, knowing they can probably just roll out the basketballs and win that one. As we get to the round of 32, I like Duke to make short work of Baylor. I think Cooper Flagg comes back for that game, although it wouldn't surprise me if he set the entire opening weekend if they don't need him. I think Oregon beats Arizona. I just like the coaching matchup there. And then I think Wisconsin over VCU and Alabama over St. Mary's in the Elite Eight. I like Duke over Oregon, and I like Wisconsin in a mild upset over an Alabama team that is allergic to defense. And then I think Duke gives Wisconsin another reality check. It advances to its first Final Four under John Shire. And for the final region, as we head to the Midwest, I like Houston, which is now a 30-point favorite over SIU Edwardsville. I think Gonzaga over Georgia, whose numbers home and away are amongst the starkest in this tournament. I like McNeese over Clemson. Clemson, I think, kind of had the destiny run a year ago. A lot of people are on them. They've had a great season, but I think McNeese, who disappointed last year, I think this is the year they get the big upset. I think High Point does the same to Purdue. Purdue looks like a team to me down the stretch, and the fact they could not reboot in the Big Ten tournament, I think they look kind of just like a spent basketball force. I think Illinois is just such a high variance team. I'm going to take Texas. I think Texas beats Xavier. I think Texas beats Illinois. Here's the number that matters to Illinois: 28. If they shoot above 28% from three, they win. If they don't, they don't. But there's just no way to predict that. It's just very high variance. I'll have Kentucky not losing for a third time in the last 4 years in the first round against Troy. UCLA over Utah State, Tennessee over Wofford. The problem with UCLA, they're playing their own style against a way more talented version of it. So I think Tennessee beats them. I think Texas beats Kentucky and gets to the Elite Eight. McNeese beats High Point and takes on Houston. I think Houston advances there. Tennessee advances there. And then I think Houston beats Tennessee to advance to its second Final Four under Kelvin Sampson. And in the Final Four, so I hate picking 3 number 1 seeds, but here's my problem. The 6 teams that meet that Bart Torvik metric, well, are the 4 number 1 seeds. Okay, so kind of hard to do that for me without doing that. So I've got Auburn over Texas Tech, Houston over Duke. I think this is Kelvin Sampson's best Houston team as well. And then I think Auburn gets it done the year after they were everyone's most disappointing team, just like Purdue finally got to a Final Four after the humiliation of losing to a 16, just like Virginia won its national championship after being the first team to lose to a 16. The year after Auburn wins the SEC and then loses to an Ivy League team in round 1, Auburn comes back. They've been the best team all year. That's why they were the consensus number 1 overall seed. And I think now's the time to buy, and they get it done and win the school's first national championship.
Sounds good. I had kind of a similar problem as I was going through my bracket. I'm like, man, I've got a lot of chalk heading towards the Final Four, just like way too much chalk. So, that means that there's probably going to be like no chalk in the Final Four, right? Like we're going to have one number 1 seed in the Final Four.
Probably. But the metrics say to play for your upsets the first weekend and play chalk after that is what the metrics typically say. Now, chalk is not as easy to define when you've got 1 and 2 seeds playing each other and 1 and 3 seeds playing each other, right? I mean, especially in this era of college basketball, those teams aren't separated by very much. But yeah, very good point. All right, we'll come back. We'll wrap things up here with our X results and feedback of the week next. All right, we asked you, does Michigan advance to the Sweet 16? 57% of you said yes. 44% of you, or 43% of you said no. I kind of think the odds are a little less than 50%. I mean, Michigan's first opponent is a team that turns you over. Michigan struggles with that. The second opponent is maybe the best offensive rebounding team in America. Michigan struggles against that. I mean, Michigan's is very good at everything except those 2 things. And those 2 things they're very bad at. All right. So on the other hand, given their overall skill set, I mean, if Trey Donaldson plays in this tournament the way he played in the Big Ten tournament, they will get to the second weekend. He is the key, no question. That brings us to our feedback of the week. Noting what an incredible turnaround this has been, T.S. Spidey says, it's been amazing. Thank goodness for John Beilein convincing Dusty to come to Michigan Go Blue. Hey, John Beilein should get the Yari Curry assist, okay? But the Ward Manuel derangement syndrome has to stop. I've been critical at times. I'm not sure how much of an alpha AD he is. I said last year when he fired Juwan, that was an alpha move. Now show you're an alpha, go get a good coach. And he did. He went out there and beat Louisville, a basketball-first school, for the number one coaching prospect on the market, and the rest, as they say, is history. Look where we are now compared to a year ago. So it's okay to give Ward Manuel. He's the Wayne Gretzky here. You want to give John Beilein the Yari Curry assist? I'm fine with it. But Ward Manuel's the goalie, is the guy scoring the goal here. He's putting the biscuit in the basket. Here's the Gretzky here. And if you don't like that analogy, if you want to say that John Beilein's the Sergei Fedorov here, getting the assist on the wing. And you've got Ward Manuel's the Steve Yzerman here. He's the one lighting the lamp. I'm okay with that analogy as well. I might even prefer that one myself, frankly. All right, but Ward Manuel deserves his propers for this. You want to blame him for the times that he didn't come through? I'm fine with that. But then at the same time, give him credit for the times that he did. I mean, he's the one that went out and made the hire and then retained the guy with the contract extension as well, and then gave him the resources to put this roster together in the NIL era. So give Ward Manuel credit for this. He deserves it. All right. That'll do it for this week's episode of Michigan Podcast. Whether or not we have one next week will be determined by whether or not Michigan makes it to the second week. So you'll find out when the rest of us do. So when we return will be determined in between episodes. Until then, though, follow us on X at Michigan Podcast, please, on X. You'll catch us there in between episodes. Please like, rate, share, subscribe, comment both here and on Bigger Ten. We greatly appreciate it when you do both of those things. Enjoy the madness. We'll see you next time right here on Michigan Podcast. I'm Steve Deace. Go Blue.